Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to what promises to be another fabulous panel. I've found this morning utterly fascinating, and I hope you'll find this afternoon's panel as fascinating as well. I want to introduce myself. I am not a grantee under the GCBC programme. I'm an independent consultant. I'm also a social scientist, but Kate, I think I think social scientists who work in this interdisciplinary space, we can call ourselves real social scientists. So I count myself as a real social scientist. So I trained as an agricultural economist, and I worked on interdisciplinary natural resource projects in the Natural Resources Institute in Chatham in Kent, and then in DFID, as was. And I've been a research manager, but I've also worked on the other side of the coin. So I worked in DEFRA for several years as a science policy consultant and as a sort of a management consultant. So I've looked at evidence use in the policy process from all sides. And I've been working on research uptake and evidence to policy issues for the past 20 years, both in the UK and in other countries. And last year, finally, after 8 years, I finished my PhD on evidence use, actually in DEFRA. So, thank you. Thank you. And I still can't call myself Dr. Shaxson. It's really odd. Anyway, what I want to do, just to preface, before we get into the presentations, I just want to give a quick recap of a couple of webinars that I gave for some current GCBC projects on how to think about research uptake, which is super important in the current climate for the programme to be able to demonstrate its utility as a whole. So as part of this, I want to just emphasize the importance of thinking systematically and seriously about research uptake and about how you show that, that the results of your research have been taken up and used as you go through the programme. So I'm going to leave you to read this for a while, but I think the point is that there are many different ways that evidence can be used in policy and practice. And all this is taken from the academic literature, from somebody called Carol Weiss, who started out in 1979 looking at the uptake of evaluation evidence. And I've arranged them alphabetically to make the point that they're in no particular order other than the one at the bottom, which is on misuse. Decision processes, whether that's inside government departments, whether it's inside multi-stakeholder collaborations, are complex, they're multi-layered, and they often involve multiple teams, multiple organizations with their own objectives, sometimes seemingly in conflict with one another. And because of this, we need an adaptive approach to strengthening research uptake and a flexible approach to strengthening research uptake. We can come back to any of these slides in the Q&A if you want to, although I would rather you focus on the projects that we're going to hear from. The other point I think that is really important is, and this is a very, 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 very simple model of the policy process, and I'm very conscious that there are some DEFRA people in here who are going to be itching as they look at this. But the point is the triangles. The point for me is your agency as researchers. There comes a time when as researchers you have to let go in the policy process. By the time specific policies and their associated implementation and financing plans are approved, it's unlikely that you're going to be in the room. And that's because it's simply not your role. You're not part of those, you can influence the funding discussions, but you're not part of the funding discussions. And so the important point is that as researchers, what you need to do is to work to ensure that your results enhance your partner's agency within that process. So you're giving them the ammunition that they need to use in the debates about policy, in the debates about financing, by enabling them to use evidence in all the different ways that I noted on the previous slide. And in fact, letting go of your agency has to be part of your research strategy. And I think we've seen a lot of that actually in the presentations this morning, where a lot of the research is about empowering others. So from the Grand Esquelle project to, well, basically all of the other projects, and you'll see more of that in the projects that we're going to talk about in this panel. So I think the point is, and there are opportunities, I should say, where it says often done jointly. So implementation and monitoring is often done jointly. So there are opportunities to share evidence with the people who are taking the decisions. But it is quite important that you do think about being able to let go of your agency because you've handed that agency and that evidence-informed agency over to others. So if you're working on scaling research results, on influencing county, local or national policies, on building research networks, on informing decision-making, on building partnerships at various levels, on setting up infrastructure to embed research findings. It's all about throughout influencing the whole network, letting your agency go into the whole of that network. It can be a slow process, but you do need to think about how you're going to do that from the outset of your project. So the next slide. I mean, you may all have your own approach to planning research uptake, but these 4 have worked very well for me over the past 15 or so years. And Elizabeth has asked me to write a guidance note on research uptake for GCBC, which builds on the webinars that I presented a few weeks ago, and then also builds on what is coming out of today. And the webinars, I think, where's Elizabeth? Are they available online?
I think it might be on in-house portal.
Then they'll be available on the in-house portal. So if you want to catch up on the webinars, if you can't get hold of them, email Elizabeth. So this looks fairly simple. It's actually fairly complex underneath. There are lots of things that you need to think about, but I think there are structured ways that can be made very flexible, made very adaptive to your particular project circumstance. Because I think if you do have a well-structured approach, and that allows you to collect robust evidence of the changes that have resulted from implementing your uptake strategy, you will be able to tell that compelling story. But the really important point is the bit in red. You have to resource it. And international evidence suggests that at a minimum, you should be putting 4% of your project budget into uptake. This is not communications. Communications is part of uptake, but thinking through your uptake strategy and activating your uptake strategy, you should be putting up to 10% of your total project budget into actually making sure that your research results are heard, they're heard in the right places, they're understood, and that you begin to hand over that agency for change to the people who you're trying to influence. It's about deeper relationship building work to increase the chance that the research is likely to be useful and used. And as I said at the beginning, in the current uncertain funding environment, evidence of impact is going to become increasingly important. So we're going to hear from 5 projects who've got specific experiences with research uptake. What's nice is this also covers 5 different ecosystems. So Liz is going to talk about the marine environment. Eurydice is going to talk about peatlands. James, who's online, is going to be talking about agroforestry, Fiona on freshwater, and Damien on forestry. So each we're going to have slightly shorter presentations than we had in this morning's panel, but then there's going to be more time. I'm going to facilitate. I'm going to have specific questions for each of the panelists, and then we're going to facilitate a general discussion. And I should say that in the general discussion, if anybody in the room or anybody online is facing challenges with their research uptake, we'd be delighted to hear from them, and maybe we can crowdsource some useful suggestions. So, with that, I would like to introduce our first panellist, Professor Liz Cottier-Cook from the Scottish Association for Marine Science.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Louise. Thank you to the organising team, to Di, to DEFRA, to Kew Gardens for inviting me along to speak to you today. It's a great delight. I lead the Global Seaweed Superstar project. You've already heard a little bit about it this morning in Kate's talk, so we are taking you into that marine environment. I also work in conjunction with the University of Malaya in Malaysia, the Natural History Museum in London, and also the United Nations Institute's a bit of a mouthful, Institute for Comparative Regional Integration Studies. And I'll come back to them in a minute because they've been absolutely key in helping us with our global policy briefs, but I'll mention those in a bit. And Louise sort of tasked me with this sort of influencing at a high level. But I must say that in our project, we're not just aiming for that. We are also working at very much the ground level, very much the local level. So we're covering it all. But I am just going today to talk to you about that influence at the highest sort of level possible in our minds anyway. So yes, so the aim of our particular project was to develop a global strategy that protects and restores wild seaweeds while supporting livelihoods of the seaweed farmers and their communities. So can I just have a bit of audience participation? How many of you have used seaweed this morning or so far today? How many of you have used? Ooh, okay, we're getting a bit better. Okay, Louise is not counting because she's been part of projects before. But interestingly, I hope you've all brushed your teeth this morning because most toothpaste contains something called carrageenan. And carrageenan comes from tropical red seaweeds. So if you look, there's many, many, many products that contain these pharmaceutical products, medical, but food as well. It's a thickening agent, so it's in a lot of products. So just pay attention to the ingredients labels, and you might be like, oh my gosh, there's seaweed in this. So on to the influencing at the highest level then, really. Because I've been through this before on a previous, it was a UKRI ODA funded project. So I've been probably working with ODA funded projects since 2017. But it was about, for me, my experience, it's about keeping the message simple when you're influencing at a high level. And this is as simple as you can get, really. For me, it's about just including the word seaweed or seaweeds in policy. So you all know, you'll see numerous conservation restoration policies, and they'll talk about coral reefs, seagrass beds, and mangroves. And I know there's people in the room that deal with seagrass and mangroves, so we're going to sort of interlope here, but I just want seaweeds now. That's all I want. I mean, people put in brackets, e.g., coral reefs, seagrass, mangroves, and seaweeds, please. That's all I'm after. Very simple. And I achieved that in the biosecurity sphere for seaweeds and seaweed aquaculture. I'd like to think I managed to achieve that in a previous project. So this now we're entering this conservation sphere to have that one word. And just thinking about those influencers, who we are aiming to influence. We heard a little bit about this. So the UN agencies, we've worked with the UN FAO, the UN Climate Group, the UN, those top UN agencies. And if we can find the key person, and we've been really fortunate to do that, just sort of key people that believe in you and believe in your message within these UN agencies, then you're already sort of halfway there. We've also been thinking about, okay, not just the UN, but what are those sort of major regional centres, and who is it within those regional centres that you can start to influence? And because our project's based in Southeast Asia, there are a number of centres there that we have now forged alliances with and collaborations. Also, regional level, and thinking at national level, are there fisheries agencies or the conservation agencies within each of your partner organisations? And with Superstar, we work really closely and have with a number of years with the Department of Fisheries, Sabah, who have been incredibly supportive. And we work with the director there. And we publish a lot with him. You know, he's not just someone in a meeting room that we meet with on a monthly basis. We publish with him as well. And other institutes, so the United Nations University, so they're one of our core partners. They have a reach globally, and you think of all their students and all the work that they do, we work very closely with them. And also the UN Global Compact, I don't know whether, maybe I hadn't heard of them before, but they are instrumental in helping run the Global Seaweed Coalition, which represents around 3,000 members all across the world as well. So we're sort of building up a picture, if I sort of want to just get that over to you, that we also work with the industry and then with other academics. So it's building up a picture of thinking through who are the global actors, who are the global influencers in your sphere, and can you find the people within those organizations that can help you spread your message, really. So in terms of those are the sort of thinking about influencers, but then approaches. So one of the key things that we believed we needed to do was at the ocean breakthrough, so at the United Nations level, the 2030 strategy agenda, there are these ocean breakthroughs. And under marine conservation, you can see there's already a mangrove breakthrough and a coral reef breakthrough. The seagrass breakthrough is being developed and should be launched later, I think, Sophie, this year and next year. But it was like, right, we need a seaweed breakthrough. So this is what we're doing at the moment. So we've done a big report, we've got our targets, we've got our guiding principles that we will then be looking at doing a sort of soft launch with at the United Nations Ocean Conference that is happening this year in France. So we're going to have a side event there, and we're going to be working with policy influencers while we're there. So again, that's a really core approach that we're using as part of our project. We're also continuing to work with the agencies, continuing to go to those big conferences. So we've got the conference, the Ocean Conference this year, and then the Climate COP next year. We're working on, there's a big United Nations World Ocean Assessment taking place. It's the third part of that. It's a bit like the climate change, the International Panel for Climate Change. They produce their reports. So this is the equivalent for the ocean. And we now have a subchapter in that which is dedicated to seaweeds. So it's all about building up that picture and the evidence base. We're presenting at international seaweed conferences. And one thing that I got from Louise, through many years of working together, it's like a policy brief. So this is where we bring all of our research together. We work together. The first policy brief I produced, I think, was with 30 individuals, 30 experts around the world, where we put together what is the challenge? What is it we need to do? What's the evidence? And what are our key recommendations? And those policy briefs have been really, really instrumental when we've been working with policymakers. They're 4 or 5 pages long. They're not a lengthy, but it's something now that we include in all of our research projects. And it's when you're talking to the financial sector or when you're talking to different stakeholders, you give a presentation and then you say, here's a link to the policy brief, and it just gives them enough information. It's not like a science paper. It's written differently, but they can connect with that. So and then of course we've got our papers as well to support all of that. So that's just a little bit from me, and I'll come back up later to answer any questions. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Liz. And yeah, it's been great to be involved in the iteration of that project. So I'd like to introduce the second speaker, Eurydice Honorio, research leader at Royal Botanic Gardens Kew, and you'd like to come up and introduce your project. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation to this conference. It's really nice to see the diverse of projects that are being funded by GCBC. Today, I would like to share my experience working with technical working groups in Peru, in South America. This is not the GCBC part of my project. I'm not introducing my project yet, but on the last day, I will be talking about my project. It was funded by NERC. This is a NERC Knowledge Exchange Fellowship, where I was working with peatland resilience, knowledge exchange for the conservation and sustainable management of forested tropical peatlands. This was a policy-driven project. So the aim was to use a unique network of partnerships that I developed during my research career. And the aim was to really translate the scientific knowledge that we have generated during more than a decade of tropical peatlands into policies and strategies to conserve and manage these ecosystems. So peatlands, for those that might not have heard that word before, are wetland ecosystems that store large amounts of carbon below ground. So the conservation and sustainable management are essential for mitigating climate change, but also in supporting the livelihoods of the people, local and indigenous people who rely on peatland resources. So within this project, I managed to participate in this peatland technical working group. What we achieved is shown in this slide as a summary. It was an important achievement for me personally, because after so many years working on peatland, developing the research on peatlands, is that my government, I come from Peru, managed to introduce this concept into the policies to be able to conserve these ecosystems. So between July 2021 and December 2024, sometimes we think about influencing policy in a few months or weeks. This took a long time. And I will explain how we did it, no? But this peatland technical working group, in which I was participating, play a key role in developing a science-based policy, that defines the priority actions for reducing greenhouse gas emissions through peatland conservation and sustainable management. And this was included in the NDC, the National Determined Contributions for Peru. So in this slide, you can see a representative of the Ministry of Environment presenting this policy in COP27 in Egypt. So among the different actions that were included, based on the scientific knowledge that we generated, were actions related to conservation of areas, but not just at the national level, but this is more at the local, through local governments. Also, we promote this policy. We promote a sustainable management of non-timber forest products. So here we try to exclude a bit the timber production, because building roads in peatlands kind of damage the hydrology that these ecosystems rely on to be able to maintain these carbon stocks. Also, peatlands, as I mentioned before, are wetlands, so there are a lot of lakes in these areas, and people rely on fishing. So an action was also trying to promote fisheries management programs, and something that was kind of at the beginning quite a challenge to introduce as an action, but it was written in the document and in the policy. It was the recognition of the knowledge and practices and values on indigenous territories. So that was a big achievement for us. So to achieve this, I participated in this technical working group, and this was established by the Ministry of Environment in Peru. And I was serving as a boundary under a boundary spanning role. This is a very strange term, because the translation doesn't sound very, very nice. But what it really means is that it refers to institutions or individuals like me, who cross organizational borders to exchange knowledge. So in my case, I was a researcher at the time based at the Peruvian Amazon Research Institute, the first logo that you see on the left, the orange logo. Through 15 years, we were developing the research on peatlands. So it sounds quite a long time, but this was an interesting process for us, because while we were leading this research, we managed to strengthen capacities, local capacities, also develop collaborations with national and international institutions and organizations, as you see several logos here, and also encourage collaboration quite a lot. I think through my leadership and also my line manager, Denise del Castillo, we were convinced that to be able to study these places, because they are very hard places to work, we needed to collaborate and bring more people into the field. In this methodological framework, this phase, the first phase, is called the stage of building trust. And we build trust among different stakeholders, from academia, policy-making organizations like Protected Areas National Service, the Ministry of Environment, and UN program that was also getting involved and interested in peatlands in Peru, and several other institutions that were also leading peatland research in this area. In 2014, the Ministry of Environment hosted a COP in Lima, in the capital city of Peru. They had for first time the research that we were doing on peatlands, so it was quite a lot of interest because it could have a lot of carbon, so they say, oh, climate change mitigation, great strategy, but there were no political, I would say, willingness to really work on this. It took a few more years to be able to reach this point. So in July 2021, we were invited to present our research there at the Ministry of Environment. And among different research leading institutions, we were chosen for providing the scientific knowledge about peatlands in Peru. And this was interesting because at the time I have moved to the UK and I was looking for a job, so I didn't know what to do here in the UK with all my knowledge that I had about peatlands. So I found out this fellowship and I applied to NERC. And they funded this project, and they paid my time to be able to engage in policy. And so we identified through this meeting a little policy window that we will contribute to this, to the aims as well. So during several years, we worked with this technical group and managed to achieve what we wanted. So this, what I wanted to also mention about the methodology that I got engaged, it was to analyzing the data, also translating this information in more available, that can be translated to so that different stakeholders were involved on these tables could use the information. And also we developed tools to be able to include emissions into these reports. Also, I apply different key skills, such as active listening and engaging with key partners in the technical working groups, developing conservation messages, and also building strong new alliances. And you may wonder, why did I do this? So these skills were really essential for addressing challenges within the technical working group. As you may expect, like when we are sitting in these tables, every institution wanted to bring their own position and their own message. So what I thought that to be able to convince the Ministry of Environment to go forward, it was we needed to unify our voices and that we all have this similar message. We want to conserve the peatlands for future generations. So with my new GCBC grant, we will be able to follow up and assess the success of this policy engagement and also create new opportunities to contribute to new ones. So thank you very much for your attention.
That's great. Thank you very much, Eurydice. I think you can see just the breadth of, you can begin to see the breadth of activities that need to happen if you're thinking seriously about research uptake. So now we're going to go online. James, I can see you. I can see you. Hi, James. So James Mutunga Joshua, who's a local action manager at Nature Kenya. James, maybe you could introduce yourself a bit better than I have just done and introduce your project, and then we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, Luis. Hoping you can hear me clearly. And thank you for that introduction. My name is James Mutunga Joshua, like you have mentioned. And thank you, GCBC team, for inviting me and Nature Kenya for this presentation. I want to start by stating that our project is really communal. So I'm presenting on behalf of all these stakeholders listed there. The location of our project is Cherangani Hills, which is a key biodiversity area, one of Kenya's water towers located in the Rift Valley. It is a key food basket for Kenya, and the indigenous peoples and local communities in that landscape are very highly dependent on the forest resources for their livelihoods and survival. The aim of this project was to promote positive long-term impacts for biodiversity, poverty alleviation, and resilience of the Cherangani forest ecosystem. And to achieve this aim, research was very key for development of solutions that can be applied by government, both national and at sub-national level, the local communities, and other actors in the landscape to promote sustainable development and adaptation and mitigation actions. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is to indicate that indigenous communities and the local communities in indigenous peoples and local communities in Cherangani landscape are at the center of this research. They are the beneficiaries, they are dependent on this forest. They are the custodians, and most important, they are important knowledge holders. And again, to mention that the resources, the natural resources in this landscape are a pillar of economic development. Benefits accrue to everyone, both locally, nationally, and globally. But 90% of the cost of maintaining this ecosystem is borne by the people that live in the immediate neighborhood, who are the local communities. Therefore, the need for a systemic change which catalyzes policy and decision-making to inform sustainable development, adaptation, and mitigation, overall promoting resilience of the ecosystem and people. Next slide. So, and I think this is the most important slide for this presentation. This research project is implemented in 5 work packages. And one of those is the ecosystem services assessment, which sets out to provide estimates of the value of all goods and services that are drawn from the ecosystem. And the second one is the restoration opportunity assessment methodology, ROM, which will provide, will map all areas that are degraded in the state forests and also in the buffer zone, and also provide estimates of the cost that is required to restore these degraded areas. Then we have the Cherangani Forest Restoration Business Case, which will utilize evidence provided by the Ecosystem Service Assessment and the ROM to package a justification as to why government, local investors, and also the local communities should plow back the benefits that they draw from this ecosystem into its restoration. The other work package is ecosystem-based adaptation strategy and action plan, and this will provide guidance on mechanisms and frameworks that can be adopted to promote adaptation and mitigation practices, which enhance the resilience of livelihoods locally and also the resilience of the ecosystem. Then we have the participatory forest management planning, which we refer to as PFMPs. These plans will work towards creating the partnership between government, that is Kenya Forest Service, and the local communities in terms of joint agreement on how to manage and govern forest resources in Cherangani landscape. And all these work packages are implemented by partners, academia, we have Kenyatta University, and key government agencies in the forestry and environment sector in Kenya, who are best placed in the pathway of policy formulation and decision making, which is important for mainstreaming the results of this research. And just for your note, the partnership is the mainstay of this project, and we consider it our success. I think for now, that is what I will say. I will participate more in answering any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. And sorry, if I sneeze, I will try and protect it from, protect the online audience from that. So a completely different, three very, very different sets of projects, but I think you can again see the wealth of approaches that are being taken. And James, just to let you know, I will have a particular, I will have a question for you on how you develop the business case, because I think that's absolutely fascinating. I'd like now to move to Fiona, who's going to talk about influencing at all levels simultaneously.
Thank you very much, Louise. Yes, I'm Fiona Noonan. I'm a Professor of Environment and Development at the University of Birmingham. And I'm working with partner organisations, mainly in Uganda and Malawi, where the project is based. But we also have a partner in South Africa as well. So the project then, building adaptive fisheries governance capacity in Malawi and Uganda, is concerned with developing a governance approach, or at least investigating how we can build capacity for this adaptive fisheries governance approach that is more responsive to change, is more able to cope with climate change, is more focused on how you recognise different forms of knowledge, how you collect, share and use information, etc. So it's really a bit about bringing climate change, biodiversity protection and fisheries management together, and of course remembering poverty alleviation and improving livelihoods too. So the aim of the project then is to strengthen adaptive governance capacity of inland fisheries. These are both landlocked countries with very substantial inland fisheries, with the Great Lakes containing some of the Great Lakes of Africa, to deliver positive impacts on biodiversity, poverty alleviation and improved ecosystem resilience. Now, I've divided these slides then into the two questions I was given. So as Louise said, I was asked to think about, reflect upon how we're trying to influence policy and change at all levels, so national, mainly national, subnational and local. And we're doing that through then, firstly, thinking about who do we need to engage with. So we were asked, how do you work out where to start? So I thought that it would be useful to think about, well, who are we engaging with? And of course, given that we are concerned with fisheries governance, we're working very closely at the national level with the departments of fisheries. And that's really important that we start with them, that we recognise their role that they have in leading on fisheries management and governance in the two countries. And there are also some non-governmental organisations at the national level. At the district level, we're mainly working with the district fisheries officers, but also with politicians, other officers at the district level, because it is we are trying to develop a more integrated approach, bringing sort of natural resource, other natural resource officers, forest officers, etc., together with fisheries. And at the community level as well, we've involved a sample of communities. Obviously, we're sort of limited in the time and resources we have, but we have representative communities from a number of lakes in both countries involved in the research project from the very start. And obviously, it's really important that we get their voices, their input, both men and women from different occupations and from different lakes. We have, to some extent, engaged more regionally as well, but we'll do that more as we digest our findings a bit more and have more to share. So how do we work out where to start then? Well, as I've noted already, that we have to start really at the national level, because even to reach the subnational level, we have to go through the fisheries departments. We have to respect protocol and use our contacts and our reputation as well. And of course, that was really important from the outset to develop the proposal together. We consulted the fisheries departments on our ideas. We already had established links with them. And so it was really important that we had their support and that the project made sense for them as well. So not just sort of academically. And we have quarterly meetings, online meetings with the fisheries departments in the two countries, trying to sort of build connections between the countries, share lessons, share experiences, and make sure that we are aware of what else is going on, how the project fits with their other priorities and agendas and activities. And what has been really important as well, that there are good working relationships between the government and the fishing communities, because otherwise things could be quite difficult. So in terms of the second question that was put to me is, what approaches have we found to be most effective and what successes can we claim? It is quite early days. This project started in November 2023. Took a little bit time to get off the ground, but we are full steam ahead now. But as I've sort of already alluded to, what has been really important is having already very well established working relationships with the fisheries departments, with NGOs. And that was partly the partners that I'm working with in Uganda and Malawi, their relationship, you know, the National Fisheries Research Institute in Uganda, for example, obviously works very closely with the Department of Fisheries. They are both government departments. But I'd also worked in Uganda in fisheries for 5 years, almost about 20 years ago, admittedly, but still I'm sort of well known over there, and I've got good connections, and I've done had a number of research projects over there over time. So having well-established relationships has really helped us move fast. I think without those established relationships, there's trust and really an understanding the situation, the context, has really made a huge difference, enabled us to move a lot faster than I think we would have otherwise. And secondly, taking a co-production approach to research has really been important if we want to have influence at multiple levels. And by co-production, I mean really trying to sort of work out what research priorities are, how we're going to do the research, and involving communities, government in every stage of the research process. So we've done that by having a workshop initially about the design of the research, what the priorities are, how we're going to do it, and involving some of the stakeholders actually in the collection and analysis of data. And that's, so as I say, that's very much through these multi-stakeholder workshops. And then I think what's also been important, as I say, is really understanding the context, the priorities, and how this research fits into those, what's going on. So we're very much sort of being aware of what the governance situation is, how the ideas that we're bringing from this research fits in to the challenges that they face, and how it could sort of really try to develop this more integrated and sustainable approach. So far, I would say it's sort of fairly early on still, but we've certainly created a lot of interest in adaptive fisheries governance. There seems to be good understanding, buy-in, interest in the approach. Bringing the different stakeholders together has been very much appreciated. It gives them an opportunity to really share ideas and experiences and have a better understanding of what the challenges are. So we've really established this platform then of stakeholder groups with a shared vision of adaptive fisheries governance, and I've already identified several practical ways that adaptive fisheries governance could be adopted in a kind of incremental approach, and that will be feeding in to the development of plans and guidelines as we progress over the next year or so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Fiona. We're now going to move into the final presentation in this session from Damien. Where's Damien? Which is about building research networks. So one of the questions that we had was, how can we define what a good research network looks like? What should it be aiming to achieve? And what approaches do you find most effective in strengthening research networks? And what successes can you claim? Damien, over to you.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself first.
Okay, thank you very much. It's already a good afternoon, I think. Good afternoon. My name is Damian James, coming from Tanzania, and I work with a farm organization in Arusha region as a program officer. We also work under the Nurture the Nurture program, which is also under GCBC, and we also collaborate with other organizations that are not maybe here, including IIED. So we have our program also do some studies and research, and also connecting all we understood in different studies, how we can really use them for the to convince duty bearers in decision making. So I will be talking on how we organize the research networks, and how this research networks is really helping basically small-scale farmers on agroecological intervention or agrobiodiversity. So our aim in this specific work of organizing or building the research network is to make sure that, okay, we put our efforts together to address challenges that are really facing small-scale farmers in different intervention on agroecological intervention and biodiversity. This includes also issues of the climate change and agrobiodiversity, while we are also building capacity of farmers, researchers, and also policy duty bearers. So in this case, we come together in different setups, including the innovation platforms that is actually built during the program implementation, and we digest issues based on the research we did together with the research networks, and come up with the solutions that they can really help farmers, or also help duty bearers to really decide based on the research results. So in these interventions, we involve different stakeholders, including farmers themselves, researchers, as well as traders who are also consumers of the products, and duty bearers. As we said, duty bearers are the policy makers, people who are deciding what to be done in the government, and this makes them also decide while they have information. So we are organizing the research networks in a different way. As a farmer organization, we have farmer researchers. The farmer researchers they are doing different interventions based on their activities, daily activities. So they test the different technologies. For example, in agroecology, they maybe test how mixed cropping is working, how maybe crop rotation in a way is working, and then they replicate this information to the other farmers. So the researchers normally have also to get a backup from the researchers, and normally we're using the Agricultural Research Institute, TARI, to at least support them technically. And normally we also interchange with the university researchers, and here where we are also getting the higher level research institutions contributing to the farmers' research. So in this case, where we get together is on the research innovation platform, where all researchers from universities, from research institutions, farmers, and sometimes even the duty bearers are also involved and meet together, discuss issues that were maybe identified by the farmers, by the research institutions, and also by the university, and see if the solutions are really aligning. And if there are issues, they have really to organize and discuss the issues. So, and where we agreed so that these issues can be taken is where now we go and advocate for some of the issues. We want to take some really practical issues and present to the politicians or to the parliament or to the duty bearers for the practical suggestions. And here we normally meet with the different duty bearers like Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of maybe Environment, because this is also related. And we can already see in a meeting like this picture here, the Minister of Agriculture, we were talking to him before he was actually going to the Parliament, that, okay, we already meet with the Agricultural Committee, but then we want also to insist that it's important these issues are also taken off. I will give some examples of how we work, and this is very important because we, as farmer organization, with farmers who are researchers, and then with collaboration with institutions that are really working together, we do study. For example, the study was a study on the farm-led seed management system. This is farmer-managed seed system. How this can really drive agrobiodiversity and really make sure that, okay, the varieties of the local seeds are enhancing biodiversity. So we do research. For example, farmers, they have also to ask, I mean, we are asking ourselves, are the farmers using farmer-managed seed system? Or we are just talking? Then we already saw and result that 80% of the farmers in Arusha region, they're using the farmer-managed seed system. And we are checking, are these really with resistant to pest, diseases, and drought? If yes, then normally yes, depends with the varieties. And then we also see how the seed distribution is and how also it's marketable. We also go to the law. Is the law doing what? Then we share all this information, and farmers are discussing with the researchers in innovation platform, and we are sharing also solutions with the researchers and coming up with the actions, and also drafting the policy papers, the policy brief. And this is also reported to the policymakers, where we meet together with the parliamentary and then discuss issues, and then after submission, we followed up. So for the results for this program, we already saw, I mean, the research network is working, is functioning. There is a complementarity, and we see the government is also instructing TARI to do research, because they are seeing there is also importance to do research on farmer-managed seed system. And the better thing and very important thing is that the government was also increasing the budget for the research by 1%. And lastly, we see they already put 432 billion shillings on the gene bank. That is very important for the program. So another study was also adoption of agroecology. You see 60 farmer researchers were involved, six researchers from Research Institute, Mandela University was there, SUA was there, and more than 360 farmers were also involved. And we see adoption rates was also increasing. As you see, farmers are also working on agroecological activities and interventions. But most importantly, the government is now seeing the importance of agroecology and agreed to co-build the National Organic and Agroecological Strategy, and that was actually launched last year. So this is one of the success of the programs we are seeing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Wow, 432 billion shillings invested in a seed bank. That's not bad. I'd like to invite all the panelists now to come up. With your microphones. Have a seat, and we have fantastic, and we have James back online. Maybe I'll sit here. So I just wanted to, I mean, you've heard a very, there's a wealth of experience and information about research uptake in all of those presentations, and I hope that's given you a real idea of the range and the variety of approaches to research uptake and the types of projects that people have been working on. But James, I'd like to come to you first. Because there's a panel on financing later this afternoon. And so I'm really interested to know, how did you develop the business case? And what were some of the challenges that you encountered or are encountering as you work towards it? Could you expand a little bit on the business case?
Thank you for that question, Luis. I would want to state clearly that the forest restoration business case is work under progress. For us to create a business case, we are dependent on the information evidence generated through ecosystem service assessment and the restoration opportunity assessment methodology. And we'll also carry out studies on water dependencies downstream, so that we use all that information to compile the business case. The ecosystem service assessment and the ROM are, in fact, the validation took place only last week, so we are hoping to start now working on the business case in the coming weeks.
Great, thank you very much, and I hope you'll keep us all updated on how that goes.
Certainly, yes.
While people are thinking about their own research questions, I'll carry on asking questions of the panel. Liz, you had a very simple message to get seaweed incorporated into key organizational strategies and policy documents. But did you find that very single-minded focus helped to unlock other wider conversations as well?
Ooh, good question. Yeah, I definitely feel that keeping the message very simple, yes, because then it, as you say, it opens up that discussion. If I may give an example from a previous project, it was funded by UKRI under the Global Challenges Research Fund, and it was about seaweed biosecurity because vast swathes of seaweed farmers lost each year due to pest and disease outbreaks. So we thought biosecurity was really important. And just getting seaweed, and I should say at FAO level, the United Nations FAO level, they were very concerned about finfish and about shrimp, the disease there within the industry. But they hadn't considered biosecurity to do with seaweeds, and yet seaweeds is second only in terms of production volume to finfish. So it was a major thing that they had sort of missed, really. But one of the wonderful women who led the aquaculture team in FAO, she realized this and sort of got me on board in one of their technical groups. So just then being part of that process of developing new policies at that level, introducing the term aquatic plants, and seaweeds was in there, not only opened up the discussion about including seaweeds, plants in their documents, but also got us invited to other much wider. We ended up going to the FAO, it's the Committee of Fisheries Subcommittee on Aquaculture. We ended up being invited there to give a side event to do with the importance of conserving and the biosecurity around seaweed. So we were then invited to talk in front of all the UN members at their main committee meeting. And as a consequence of that, went on to have much wider discussions about the importance of seaweeds in other conversations. And it's that ripple effect. So starting from a very, very simple message, just including one word in a policy document, it's quite incredible to see how that ripple effect has increased, the awareness of conservation at that highest level. Awareness of seaweed, at that highest level.
Yeah, fantastic. So I think that's certainly something for your communications colleagues not to worry about so much. That are really a simple message can have much wider ramifications. But you talked about participating in working groups, and Eurydice, I wanted to ask you. You talked about active listening in your presentation in the technical working groups. Could you expand on that a bit more? What does active listening mean when you're in the working group meetings? And is that a way that you build trust?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yeah, it's a bit of a methodological strength that I gained through participating in these meetings. And there I realized that most of my colleagues as researchers, that we wanted to have a voice and be listened. So we scare really the Ministry of Environment representatives with all our terms and technologies that we use. And very quickly I realized that they started to be in silence. And I was scared that maybe they will change the topic of discussion or just focus on a different policy. So I started practicing listening to them first and saying, please, could you just listen to what they want? And they're gathering details of what kind of information they wanted, they needed, and the worries, what were the concerns. And it fed me quite a lot on how to focus my research as well and how to present the results to them. And I think that was how I succeeded on they choosing my research group to provide the information and not others, just because of being there, listening what they wanted. I think it was just a trying and first failing, because I was one of those who wanted to be listened as well. But then I realized very quickly that wouldn't give me to the end. So take me to the end. So yeah, I changed my strategy. Yeah, it's just
fantastic, and it worked.
It worked really well. Yes, yes. And they even was approached by them in private to ask questions about the other researchers, but I then realized that they were not understanding what we were talking about. And it's scary when you are trying to influence policy, that you are not being understood. So what are you expecting? You just complain, saying they don't know anything. But it's not that they don't know, that we are not expressing our ideas at the level that they need to be able to say, no, this is a priority topic for us, for the government.
Yeah, and also understanding their questions.
Understanding, yes, because you sometimes need to go a level down, like, come on, go a step down. You need to explain, it's like I said, peatlands, we were peatlands, but they were kind of, so is peatlands within the wetland strategy? Where do we put peatlands on? I'm like, it's a wetland. Yeah, so you need to go a step backwards. Yeah. You don't just go in technical terms and,
Liz, is that something that you found as well?
Yeah, yes, you have to.
Just because you're nodding a lot.
No, very much. You have to sit and listen to what they and it's working with partnerships as well. It's building you talked a lot about trust. I think Fiona mentioned as well that you'd already worked with your partners for a number of years. It's about establishing that trust, listening to what they have to say, and then taking that on board and then finding a common language. I think you taught me about this, Louise, as well, but finding that common language in which you can then move forward and then slowly maybe introduce some of the technical terminology, but sometimes you don't need to introduce that. You just keep it as simple as you can.
Yeah.
Not dumbing it down, but just keep it as simple and as straightforward as
Bring in the technical stuff when you need to.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you need to.
If you need to. So Fiona, so we've talked about trust, we've talked about being in the right place at the right time and talked about active listening. But I wanted to ask you about, if you're working at all levels, what do you actually mean by by policy? What do you interpret policy to mean? Because if we're thinking about government policy, that gets revised very rarely. And so what are some of the other opportunities and mechanisms for influencing that you found to be helpful?
I think the approach that we're taking then is that ultimately we want to develop some sort of plans and guidelines. And I think for the adoption of adaptive fisheries governance. But I think what we'll do is sort of break those down really into some sort of more practical guidance that could be taken up now. I suppose an obvious example is where there's a great need is for better information sharing, including from research, because still research very often doesn't reach the Department of Fisheries. It certainly doesn't reach the fisheries officers or the community. So I think even things like better information sharing, really sort of operationalising some of the commitments already there in policy, but not really happening, like around better integration between natural resource sectors. So I think it's about trying to understand. I think the project, fortunately, is going in the direction that the departments want to go in, but it's maybe about more operationalising that. So I think it's really being aware of the policy environment and looking for opportunities to make things fit, really, rather than necessarily thinking we're going to come up with a brand new policy and change everything. But,
and of course, operationalising what is already there is one of the ways of demonstrating the utility of your research.
Yes, absolutely.
Which comes back to what Eurydice was saying about, understand what their questions are, which is how can we make this work? And if you can then prove that it, or contribute to making it work, then that can be a way of demonstrating the validity and the utility of your research.
Absolutely, hopefully. Yeah.
No, of course you can.
No, we'll do, definitely. Yeah.
Of course you can.
Yeah.
But here's the big question I'm going to ask you, Damien, and I'm sorry I didn't prep you in advance for this. And then, James, I'm going to come to you as well with the same question. So managing all of this takes a huge amount of time. And what are some of the key, I mean, if you've been managing a research network, you're managing an innovation platform, I mean, obviously not you on your own, but, within your research network. What are some of the key things you think people need to consider as they set up research networks and platforms so as to have maximum impact? What are some of the things that you need to put into your project document? What are some of the things that you need to constantly hold in your mind?
Okay, thank you very much. There are things that you have really to consider, and one of the very important thing is the common goal. Every researchers, are they really believing? For example, in our case, there are some researchers don't believe on agroecology, but then here we have really to check who is really on this, and some of them they maybe think farming is normal farming that is actually not related to the environmental issues. So we want guys who are also thinking of or also believing on agrobiodiversity. And in this case, it's easy. And another thing that is very important is that is also if some institutions are also believing on sustainability, and this is very important. And another consideration is that are they also believing on teamwork? Because some of the organization wants really to show up, okay, they can do themselves. But if you don't believe in teamwork, you cannot. And another thing that is very important to have a strong farmer organization, because all these are taken to the interest of the farmers, who are everyday producers of the food, and also working on the fields, and they are also ones who are really getting the impact of the climate change. So in this case, we have also to make sure that okay, farmers, they also, and farm organization also understand that, but farmers themselves also understand the situation. So these are the key things that in the research network is there. And another thing is okay, the way we can organize the coordination. If you don't have a very good coordination, this means the sustainability of research networks and also innovation platforms are not really visible. But if we coordinate. Okay, the farmer organization is responsible maybe for organization. Researchers, they may be responsible to support their researchers to come on the platforms. And everyone should really have the task, and that task should be really taken together. So this was,
Fantastic.
yeah.
3 really strong lessons there. James, would you share those lessons? Just in terms of how you make sure that all of this happens as you try and set up these networks.
Thank you, Louise, for that opportunity. I think I finished by my presentation by mentioning that our success is embedded on the partnership that we are working in. This partnership did not come up only during the start of this GCBC project. It is partnership that has been built to lead into long-lasting trust, which is founded on consistent engagement of these partners, the academia, Kenyatta University, the KFS, and other government agencies, national museums, and also involving local communities. Nature Kenya has many years, more than 30 years of working closely with communities. In fact, we have communities, 30 community groups, we call them site support groups, in 26 key biodiversity areas. We build their capacity to be able to carry out some of these activities even without supervision. And also being able to collaborate with government in the perspective of enabling them, building their capacity, the people that we engage with, so that we can be able to transfer resources like money to them for components that they are carrying out. They carry out the components, the activities themselves, and they account to nature.
Oh no! Oh, James, I think you've gone. Let's hopefully hope we can get James back. James, are you there? Sorry, you disappeared for a little bit.
Sorry, I'm there.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, we can now. Thank you.
Yes, I was talking about the building and enabling capacity of the partners, the government departments that we work with, so that we have a dependable system where we can be able to transfer resources to them. They deliver these activities, and we help them to achieve their mandate. So we solidify this partnership, and that has worked for us for many years, different projects, and we think it is the best thing for us. It works for us. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very interesting indeed. I would like now to throw the floor open. Do you throw the floor open? Sorry, apologies. I'm not 100% today. Oh, actually, no. There was one thing while James was talking. I was remembering that when Liz and I were developing a project proposal, that original project proposal, I do remember thinking, I think we really need to just put 10% more than what we think we're going to need for project management and coordination. So I think as a general rule, there are lots of nods going on in the room. 15%? Yeah? 20? Yes. So whatever you think you're going to need for project management and coordination, and I think Damien's 3 lessons, checking everyone shares the same understanding about key concepts and activities, checking that everyone shares the same understanding of the approaches that you're going to take. It takes time, and time is money. And so whatever you think you're going to need for project management and coordination, yeah, I'm hearing 15 or even 20%, just increase it. But if you don't have that, you're not going to get a well-coordinated project. And without a well-coordinated project, you've got less likelihood that you're going to actually make a difference in the world. So it's always a balance between doing the research and doing all the other stuff that needs to happen to make the research useful and used. Let's go to the floor. We've got one question there. Have we got nothing online yet? So yes, please. Can you introduce yourself and then and ask your question? And the mic is coming.
Thank you. I'm Joyce from Brazil. I work for a Brazilian institution, the Brazilian Amazon. Thank you very much for the presentations, very inspiring, important topics. Something that it occurs to me, and it was clear in your presentations, was that building trust is very important, like it's crucial in the process. Also, sharing values, so this is also takes time to get there. And we are moving from translating science more to co-production science. It's also, all of this takes time. And this time is really difficult when we consider the time frame of the funding. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this, how to deal with all these challenges to a kind of science that is really useful and co-produced with the stakeholders. Thank you.
Wow, that's a big question. Who would like to take that? Damien.
Yeah. You know, we as maybe as a farmer organization, we have maybe different partners we are working with, and the activities should really align with our objectives and about all related intervention. But then, because we know the programs are maybe limited in number of 3 years, 2 years, but we have really to make sure that, okay, as an organization, we have a good relation maybe with government, because even government, if you don't really do your advocacy in a way they can reason is another problem. But this is like lifetime. Working closely with a research institution, you make trust with the research institution, and working with other NGOs and different actors who we work together with program or without program. And this makes farm organization more stronger, even if the programs goes. And the important thing here is good relationship with donors, yes, but then good relation with different actors around the organization and around different platforms where organization is.
Thank you, Damien. Liz.
Thank you for your question. Just to go back to that trust, and as you say, it takes time to build that up. And if I think back now, we're probably going back to 2013, over 12 years that I've been working with various organizations and partnerships within the seaweed realm and we were really fortunate because at the time the UK government had, through its Natural Environmental Research Council, it had an international overseas fund. And it was just smaller amounts of money, but it enabled us to run workshops, 2 or 3 workshops, I think, in the UK, and bring people in. So that's sort of where we got to know them. And then from there, we then and know them in person, not just virtually. So we actually got to speak to them in person, develop those early sort of relationships. And it's from that meeting that we're now working with the partners that we're working with. So yeah, it does take time. And I suppose it's coming to meetings like this. It's going to conferences in person, and then just finding those smaller pots of money. And maybe I shouldn't, but I mean, there is another pot of money at the moment through, there's the GCBC, but there's also, it's called oceangrants.org, and they've got small community grants, they've got partnership grants. There's a number of different funding avenues at the moment. The UK government it's amazing, really, the money that is available, as far as we can tell. But to get involved with some of those, to develop new partnerships, if that's what you want to do. But if you can work with existing partnerships, that's always.
I think another important point is start start thinking about this as soon as you start the project. Don't wait until the research is complete and then think, now, how am I going to get this package taken up? And I think what we've heard from all of the panelists is that research can have an impact throughout. And that's part of what I'm going to be writing in the guidance, is about how you can assess this and how you can work with it and how you can begin to plan it. So I think the lessons are build the relationships from the start, get involved in the technical working groups. Fiona was talking about being involved at all levels. I was hearing from James there's an iterative approach to the products that you produce and thinking creatively the whole way along the research cycle as to how you can have impact at different, with different aspects of your research at different stages, even if the first thing that you're doing is just clarifying what the questions are. Because then you can work out, okay, maybe we haven't, the research hasn't been finished, but once it has been finished, we know how to present it such that it asks that question, rather than saying we're doing the research now, what question can we address with the research? Just get familiar with the policy environment. Anybody? Eurydice, and then back to Damien.
Yes, I wanted to add in terms of co-production, because I had also the opportunity to write one of the data that we collected in the field with the different stakeholders that got involved. And by doing this, I needed to acknowledge as well that the contributions that we expect from the different stakeholders, especially those that are not research-based, that the contribution won't be on the data analysis maybe, but yes, on the ideas. Possibly you were driving your questions in a different way because of talking to them, because you were engaging with the community, so they got involved on how you reshape your questions, original research questions. So we need to change our mind of just scientific papers being said that you will be a co-author if you just collect the data, you analyze the data, you wrote the paper. Maybe now in co-production we need to say if they were also involved on the ideas, how you shape the questions, how you end up interpreting the results. So there are other contributions that these other actors have to contribute in science.
Thank you very much. I wanted just to add on approaches of actually implementation of different programs with different partners. This is a synergy where we put maybe 2 or 3 programs, but synergetically, where we meet and make sure that, okay, every program is meeting its objective while you are improving inputs to the activities. And another important thing for the farmer organization is to have a farmers center where every partner can really come and invest in a small area, and you get or you grow more, because farmer centers can be also dealing with capacity building, can deal maybe with the marketing, can deal maybe with the processing. So R&A programs can really chip in, and some of the things in terms of agroecological or biodiversity can be addressed. So I was trying to make sure that, okay, these 2 things, synergies, and then farmer centers can really help for the sustainability.
Thank you. James, did you have anything? I'm just conscious that you're not in the room, and I want to make sure that you're included. Did you have anything to add?
Thank you for remembering me. I think I don't water down. I don't want to water down what others have said, but the element of transparency in terms of building long-lasting or working relationship or partnerships, transparency is very core. You almost also alluded to involvement of your key stakeholders at the start, the project design, so that you go through the phases of developing the project with them, including the local communities, where, for example, sometimes you may need a letter of support from local community to apply for the project, so that all these people, they have trust in each other, and you'll find when it comes to implementation, you find it easy and working. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Any questions online? Yeah, 2. We've got 2 questions online. Thanks.
Thank you. We have two questions from Sukun in Cambodia. First question is, communications-wise, what are the best ways to present evidence-based research findings with the government partners or representatives? And the second question is related, seems to be having problems. In the event that there is a lack of potential will, despite the evidence-based research, what will the potential solutions be? So if the government isn't listening, what other avenues are there?
Be patient.
Well, I think one of the to answer that the second question first, if there isn't a will, have you got the right question? You know, are you answering? Are you trying to answer a question that they have? If they, I mean, but then, Liz, I would come to you to say, you know, you went in with one very, very simple message, but just by listening to what was going on, and Eurydice the same thing, by listening to what was going on, you got a much better understanding of what the questions were, and then got into some of those other conversations. So maybe the answer to that second question is, if there is, you know, if there isn't a will, is are you answering the right question, and are you listening to what their question actually is? Is there anything you'd want to add to that, Fiona?
Well, I think that just goes back to sort of the design of the research, as you say, because it's got, I mean, I think we will have all responded to a call when it comes to GCBC, so there are some perhaps constraints there, but you've got to do something that makes sense for the context, and so that it's sort of meaningful, you know, for the governments to be involved, for the communities to be involved. It's a big commitment, and so it needs to be useful and make sense to them. That's why you need a good understanding of what's going on and what sort of challenges they face and how the research can be useful to them. And I think in terms of communicating the research findings or the research, I think you have to use a number of mechanisms, and certainly dialogue is the best way. So you do need these face-to-face meetings, but you need a way of summarising and communicating the research effectively as well.
Thank you. We are at time, but I would like to end, if I can take the chair's privilege, with a story from my own personal experience. So I was working inside the Department of Environmental Affairs in South Africa, and we had been doing some work on understanding how they were using evidence already. So we had, there were some academic researchers, and I was working in a think tank. And we went round the department, did lots of interviews, and came back with the draft report. And I handed the draft report to my collaborator, who was a senior official in the Department of Environmental Affairs. And she said, "Louise, I can't accept this report." And I said, "Why not?" And she said, "I've been working on this issue for 8 years. It's my baby. And this report is telling me my baby is ugly." She said, I really, you know, I really don't like that. You know, this is my own, you know, I put my heart and soul into what we've been doing, and you're telling me my baby is ugly. I will circulate a blog that I wrote based on this, which is called How Not to Tell Government Departments Their Babies Are Ugly. But what's really important, and it comes back to what is the question. Because if you come in and you say, well, Liz, I'm sorry, you've got the question completely wrong. You know, your question ought to be this. And Liz, as a senior policy official, is going, how dare you? Or, you know, I have spent weeks, months, years working on this issue, and you're telling me that I'm wrong? Of course, they're not going to listen to you. So I will circulate. It's online. I'll send the link to the blog. But it's about your wording as well. You ought to be really careful about how you word things. So don't say this is wrong. Say, if this is what you're trying to achieve, then here's a way of thinking about it. Here's something that you could be doing. But preface it with, these are your goals. So I wouldn't come to you in your research organization and say, well, I don't think you should be doing it that way. I would say, what is it that you're trying to achieve? And how can my advice help you do it better? So it really is about thinking how you phrase your communications, and it all comes back to, are you answering the right question? And with that, I would like to thank the panelists for a fascinating discussion. James, particularly for holding on online. I know how difficult it is to do that. I really do. And to Damien, Fiona, Eurydice, and Liz. And I'd also like to give a big thank you to Elizabeth Warham, who has done so much to help put this panel and I think the rest of the day together. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.